On the far edge of a small colony, on the fog-quiet coast of a world that was not the world where people had begun, there stood a lighthouse, and Marin kept it. The colony was a young one, and a little one, a scatter of warm lights along a cold and lovely shore, with a great dark ocean before it that no one had yet troubled to name. Marin's work was the light. Each evening, as the long dusk came down, she climbed the winding stair to the great lamp at the top of the tower, and she woke it, and she sent it turning out over the water, its slow beams sweeping the dark, on and off, in a steady, patient rhythm that keepers had kept since the very first lighthouse on the very first shore, a long way away and a long time ago. There was a great comfort in that she had found in doing a thing so old that it tied her, across all the dark miles of the crossing, to every keeper who had ever climbed a winding stair to wake a light against the night. The world beneath her feet was strange, its rocks a color that rocks had no business being, its tides keeping a stranger time than any tide of home. But the light was the same light. The dark was the same dark. And the small, brave act of setting the one against the other was the same act it had always been on any shore on any world. It was old work, older than the colony, older than the crossing. And Marin, who had come to the quiet coast to be alone, and had got her wish more completely than she had expected, found that she loved it. It was, if she was honest, a lonely sort of loving. The colony was small and far behind her, over the headland, and few boats ever came to this stretch of coast, for the good harbors were elsewhere. Some nights Marin stood at the top of her tower and watched her light sweep the empty water and wondered, in a quiet way that she did not let trouble her too much, who exactly it was for. She had come out to this coast after a long and crowded life, a life full of people and noise and the endless wanting of things, and she had grown so tired, somewhere in the middle of it, that the idea of a lonely tower at the edge of an unnamed sea had seemed to her the most beautiful idea in all the world. She had wanted the quiet. She had wanted to be a small and useful thing at the edge of the dark, asking nothing of anyone and asked nothing in return. And she had got it exactly, and it had been good for her the way a long sleep is good for a person who has not slept in years. But a person cannot sleep forever, and something in her, without her quite noticing, had begun to wake. There were no ships. There was only the dark and the fog and the great unnamed ocean breathing against the rocks below, and the light going out into all of it, faithfully, on and off, saying what a lighthouse has always said to whatever is out there at night. I am here. You are not alone. Come safely home. She said it to no one, most nights. She said it to the sea, and the sea, being a sea, had never once said anything back, until on an evening late in the foggy season, it did. Marin was at the top of the tower, watching her beam go out across the water, when she saw, very far out, near the place where the dark sea met the darker sky, a small light. She thought at first that it was a star, low on the horizon, but it was beneath the horizon, out on the water itself. She thought then that it was a boat, though no boat should have been out there, in the deep, so far from any harbor. She watched it puzzled, and then the small far light did a thing that made the breath catch in her throat. It went out, and it came back, and it went out, and came back again, slowly, patiently, in a rhythm she knew as well as her own heartbeat, for it was the rhythm of her own light. On and off, on and off. The little light in the deep was blinking in time with the lighthouse. It was answering. Marin stood very still. Her first thought was that she had imagined it, for a person alone in a high place in the dark will imagine a great many things. So she did something she would not have been able to explain to anyone. She went to the lamp, and she changed its rhythm. She made it blink in a new pattern, 3 quick and 1 slow, a thing no lighthouse would ever do, a thing that meant nothing at all except, are you truly there? And she went back to the glass, and she watched the small far light, and she waited with her heart going hard. For a long moment, there was nothing. And then, far out in the deep, the little light blinked. 3 quick and 1 slow, exactly as she had. It had seen her. It had understood, and it had answered out of the dark water at the edge of a world that no one had named, something that no person had ever met, blinking back at her across the cold and lovely sea. She put her hand flat against the cold glass, as though she might reach across all those dark miles of water and touch the small light that had answered her. Her eyes had gone blurred, and she laughed at herself for it, a wet and astonished little laugh, alone at the top of her tower in the fog. All her life she had been told, in 100 quiet ways, that the universe was a cold and empty place, vast and indifferent, and that a person had best make their peace with being small and alone in it. And here, out on a black sea on a world without a name, that old cold story had simply come undone, gently, in the space of a few slow blinks of light. She was not imagining it. She was, for the first time in a very long time, not alone. She was not afraid. That was the thing she remembered most afterward, when she tried to make sense of it. She knew that she ought perhaps to have been afraid of a strange light in a strange sea on a strange world, of a thing unknown answering out of the deep. But there was no fear in it. There was only a great and quiet gladness, the gladness of a lonely person who calls out into the dark, not really expecting anything, and hears, impossibly, a voice called gently back. Whatever was out there, it was not hunting her. It was not warning her away. It was doing the oldest and simplest thing there is. It had seen her light, night after night, going out over the water, saying, "I am here, you are not alone," and it had come at last to say the same thing back. She stayed at the glass until nearly dawn, she and the light in the deep, blinking slowly to one another across the dark, two small lights on a vast night sea, keeping each other company. She brought a chair up to the lamp room after that first night, and a flask of something warm, and she made a small home of the high glass room for the dark hours, so that she might keep her friend company in some comfort. It struck her as funny, sometimes, that she had crossed the whole of space to be alone, and had ended by keeping a nightly appointment with a light in the sea. But it was the good kind of funny, the kind that lives close to gladness. She had not known, until it was given back to her, how much she had missed the simple fact of being expected, of there being, somewhere out in the night, something that would look for her and be glad when her light appeared. After that, it came every night. Marin would climb her tower in the long dusk and wake her lamp, and she would send it turning out over the water, and she would wait, and out in the deep the small light would appear and blink its slow greeting, and she would answer, and so their strange and wordless conversation would begin. She never learned what it was. She thought about it a great deal on the long nights. Something living, surely, something that carried its own soft light down in the dark water, and that had a mind enough to notice a rhythm, and to learn it, and to want to answer it. Beyond that she did not know, and she found, to her surprise, that she did not much need to. She gave it a name, eventually, though she never told a soul, for there was no soul to tell. She called it the lamplighter, after the old ones who had walked the streets of the first world lighting the lamps at dusk, so that no one need come home in the dark. It seemed a fitting name for a thing that lived in the deepest dark of all, and yet carried a light, and chose, each night, to shine it toward a stranger. On the nights when the fog came in too thick, and she could not see it, and it could not see her, she felt its absence the way one feels the absence of a friend. And she kept her light turning all the same, so that when the fog lifted it would know that she had been there, faithfully waiting all along. They had no words between them, and needed none. What passed between the lighthouse and the light in the deep was older and simpler than words. It was the thing that all light in all the dark has always meant. Here I am. There you are. Neither of us is alone tonight. Marin had come to the quiet coast to be alone. She had thought that was what she wanted, and perhaps for a time it had been. But she understood now, watching the small light fade into the pale water each dawn as her own lamp dimmed, that there is a difference between being alone and being lonely, and that the cure for the one is not a crowd, and never was. It is only this, one other soul in all the dark, however far away, however strange, that sees your small light going out into the night, and understands what it is trying to say, and takes the trouble to answer. She thought sometimes of the colony behind her, The warm scatter of lights over the headland. All those people who had crossed the great dark together and built their small bright town against the cold. And she understood that they had done, all of them together, the very same thing that she and the light in the deep did each night, only slower and larger and over the length of generations. That was all a colony was in the end. That was all a person was, perhaps. A small light, lit on purpose against a great deal of dark, hoping to be seen. She was glad to be one of them again, even out here, even alone. Perhaps especially out here. That was all it had ever been for the light. Not for the ships. For this. For the chance that something out in the dark might see it, and know that it was not the only one, and blink back. And so the lighthouse kept turning on the fog-quiet coast of a world no one had named, saying its old and patient thing to the great dark water. And the water, at last, after so long, had begun to answer. On and off, on and off. Here I am. There you are. Come safely home, wherever you happen to be tonight. And whatever quiet task is keeping your hands busy, thank you for spending this little while here with us. Rest easy, and whenever you are ready, there will always be another story waiting.